At the Five Forces Consultancy, we recently engaged in interviews of 5 managers from various corners of the business world with the goal of observing and analyzing the way key theories and techniques centered around management of organizations and human capital manifested in real workplace and employment scenarios. We did so in part because our firm was asked to vet the validity of the teachings presented in the Kogod School of Business's MGMT 609 course. After reporting our individual findings, we got together to discuss our interviews and the topics covered therein, sharing reactions, learnings, and insights, while comparing and contrasting observations and takeaways, and came to a greater understanding of the various subject matters in the process. We then went back, collected our thoughts, and recorded them for use here in this reflection recap video, which we hope you'll find worthwhile. I'm Adam Giffey, and I interviewed Natalie Scheinman, Head of Global Transformation Services at 7Step, a company that specializes in hiring and recruitment. Her organization is contracted to manage all or some combination of the hiring functions of their client. We discussed the link between human capital and competitive advantage. I'll be joined in this assembly of thoughts by my teammates, who I'll now introduce as they each introduce their interview subjects. There's Courtney Carmichael.
For my managerial analysis, I chose to interview Miss Lee Salamoni. She's the Senior Director of Product Advocacy at the American Chemistry Council, and she's been in this position for a little over 11 years. During our conversation, we discussed a wide range of topics, primarily settled on team management and motivation.
Reggie Harris.
I interviewed one of my managers from a previous job. His name is Shane Mulligan, and he's currently a Senior Managing Associate, as well as a wealth management advisor at MassMutual of Greater Philadelphia. The topic of my interview revolved around motivation in the workplace, specifically in the field of being a financial advisor and depending on a book of business, as well as commission for making a living.
Kennedy Perry.
And I had the pleasure of speaking with Miss Rebecca Jones, a proud wife and mother of 2 children, but also a senior business operations manager at EY Consulting. She's been with the organization for about 8 years now and was very excited to discuss with me the conditions of a virtual workplace and how it has affected her and her team.
And Richard Smith.
So I interviewed my direct supervisor named Leo, who's in charge of the information technology organization within my workplace. And I believe he was a great person to interview because he has a wealth of experience in leadership. We pretty much covered the topic of organizational culture, because he believed that was an interesting topic to talk about with him coming in as a new manager.
Well, it's safe to say we spoke to a varied group of leaders and covered a wide range of different topics. And within each of these sessions, we discussed and applied various MGMT 609 class concepts that related to our primary topics. In mine, our discussion on competitive advantage touched on the topic of an organization's value creation story, as well as the importance of quality metrics in data collection when trying to establish the results of human capital efforts, along with total compensation packages and the inequities that exist when comparing a small company's ability to create an alluring one and sell this to prospective employees versus the Amazons of the world.
We talked about her approach to team management and how she implements different tactics to motivate her employees on her team.
Some of the concepts we covered during the interview included pay as a motivator, which we went into depth about some concepts that were beneficial in this field and some that might not be applicable. These were not limited to need theory, equity theory, goal setting theory, and learning theory. Additionally, we dived into the goal setting theory as it relates to the SMART model and some of the aspects MassMutual uses in relation to their culture, mission, and vision. Lastly, McLelland's need for achievement, affiliation, and power were touched on when it came to Shane's leadership and motivation style, and the different ways he motivates his team in a profession that has some ups but many downs when first starting.
The class concept that we covered was teams and networks in week 4. Being that I too am a consultant, it really resonated with me how she was always tasked to seamlessly mold herself into the firm organization, but also the client organization. It's not always an easy thing to do, and we are to accomplish it with every engagement that we take on.
Where we discussed different class concepts on him operating in a flat organizational culture, operating in a culture of autonomy and team cohesiveness, trust and motivation in establishing trust, and embracing subcultures within the organization and the challenges of establishing an effective culture overall. A lot of these concepts that we discussed and what he talked about, especially with creating a culture of autonomy and working and giving the employees the opportunity to make their own decisions without having his permission or approval, shows how he was very focused on creating that trust and opening up that environment of ongoing feedback.
We also noticed that some things our managers spoke about lined up one for one with class concepts, and some were a little different when compared and contrasted.
Rebecca's idea of what it means to be a part of a team and how teams work in organizations was very much so aligned with what our discussions were in class. However, nonetheless, it really shocked me that she was able to utilize a lot of her emotional intelligence and get teams on board to have meaningful conversations and to not attack each other because it wasn't benefiting anyone in the situation in the end.
One thing that was a little different out of the gate for me was to see that so much of the process of human capital management can be outsourced to firms like Natalie's. Now, nothing in class directly contradicts this, but I'm not sure it's ever directly addressed that an outside firm could be so heavily involved in, for instance, shaping a culture, or setting up processes that will make or break another firm's competitive advantage, by way of owning many of their HR and recruitment policies and practices.
One thing that was different, or more unique to the financial advisor business, was the topic of equity theory. You're reaching out to a lot of people you know, friends of people you know, and sometimes even people you don't know. Because of this, the work one puts in might not equal the rewards they receive, unlike in some other professions. It was interesting to learn this because many people are under the mindset of, if I put in this amount of work, I should receive this much on my paycheck, the same paycheck that my coworker with the same title gets. However, as a financial advisor, two people might put in the same amount of work and effort, but one person receives better rewards.
During our conversation, I found that a lot of Ms. Salamoni's ideas and traits aligned with transformational leadership. She also closely followed Tuckerman's linear model of group development when discussing group dynamics and team motivation.
And I don't think there was anything that he said that was different from what was discussed in the class concepts, where it seems like he embraced a lot of the class concepts that was talked about, especially with the rituals and traditions where he allowed his division leads of chiefs to go take on any initiatives without him having to step in and get involved, because he trusted that they had the knowledge and know-how that he does not have in order to get things done and achieve the overall mission.
And we all had a few surprises along the way, too, such as when I learned about the ways Natalie's firm tries to collect performance data on the candidates they help their clients hire, especially when those candidates have been both highly successful in the roles and also have diverged from their client's ideal client candidate profile. I found that to be a really exciting way that I wasn't aware was occurring of getting firms to broaden the way they think of human capital and the types of people that they hire.
What surprised me the most were the tools MassMutual implements for leaders such as Shane to really be at the forefront and someone his team can trust and look up to because he's been in their same shoes. Any struggles they may or may not have, he's had them all. He's heard thousands of no's, but through his experience and knowing what makes the people on his team tick, he is easily able to understand and furthermore keep pushing them to better themselves as well as be someone their clients need.
I was most surprised to learn how hands-on Ms. Salamoni is with her team members. She spoke in great length about coaching and mentoring and having a holistic approach to team members and their success.
What surprised me is how cutthroat the organization was at the client side. The stories that she shared sounded something like out of a movie.
What surprised me the most was him wanting to operate in a flat organizational structure, because the government operates in a hierarchical structure, and he's talking about having a flatter organizational structure but trusting the decision making that everyone has.
In all, joint analysis of our looks at competitive advantages through human capital, leadership of teams, structures and the ways they impact and reflect culture, teams versus networks, and motivation methods, among other topics, showed that much of what was established in MGMT 609 holds true, many times in letter and almost always in the spirit of the law.